Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. And we are live streaming on YouTube. If you're watching us live, thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. You can follow at Barroom Network for all our great programming, a lot of Bears-centric programming right now, a show for everybody. And of course, if you're into the audio-only versions, we are on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. On, are we calling it X? Are we calling it X now? Is that what
his mama named him Clay, and I'm gonna call him Clay.
That's how I feel about it with the Coming to America quote, Ross. You can follow us on social media, I suppose, at the Real Evan Mac for myself, at Ross Reed for the man at the other end of this, side by side with me, if you will, right now. How's it going, Ross? What's happening?
It's going great. You can't get people in Chicago to call Willis Tower, Willis Tower.
Exactly.
And they paid a lot of money for that. They paid a lot of money to buy that building and own the rights to name that building. And people will still call it Sears Tower, even though you cannot step into a Sears anymore either. That is also, for the most part, long gone. So I think people are still going to call it Twitter. And yeah, absolutely. With that stupid ass X that he put on top of that building, pissing off people trying to sleep across the way and stuff like that. But yeah, still Twitter. Yes.
Still Twitter. I agree with you, Ross. We have a lot packed on the show today. We're talking a lot of Bears to lead off the show, from Justin Fields to the offensive line to the revamped defense. Pads are popping, so we'll dive into impressions from today's practice and training camp thus far. Other topics trending in the NFL. We'll talk about the White Sox and just what a dismal season this has been, and reactions from the fans and those reporting around the White Sox since this most recent series of fire sale moves where everybody's tradable that's not named Louis Robert. Trending topics like Lizzo and hot water, and winning time is back. Ross is real pumped for that. Travis Scott dropped his huge album last week. We'll talk about our impressions there. And Lollapalooza, if you're living in Chicago, is this weekend as well. It'll be right at Ross's doorstep, more or less.
Yes, it is actually.
I'm far away from that shit. Yeah.
Yes. This is the time of year when I can point out all the obscure NBA jerseys that these kids have no clue who the hell Kendall Gill is, or Theo Ratliff, or somebody like that.
Break out your Scalabrini jerseys. Break out every retro Karl Malone jersey, every Nuggets throwback jersey you can fucking handle from the.
Nate Robinson is a very popular one during Lollapalooza. I see often. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll start off with Bears news, and everybody around the Bears practice today, as far as reporters that I had been looking at for insight to do some pre-show prep, as it were, was talking about the intensity, right? And how we've only just started the padded practices, but a lot of these young, for every guy like Nate Davis, who we're not really concerned, he's sitting out because he's a vet. He's been through this camp many times before. There are these younger guys and guys who just love the game of football. There was some player on another team who was just talking about, I don't like football, I just like hitting guys. There's a lot of players like that out there right now. And so between the offense and the defense, I'm sure that Justin Fields and company couldn't wait to get out there and show this offense revamp. But really, the storyline today was that the defense was really turning heads and able to make things pretty uncomfortable for Justin Fields and his weapons around him. The positive was that for the offense that Chase Claypool was out there. He was a full participant. He had some good quality looks from Justin Fields and some good catches. But the offense struggled through the air mostly. I know that multiple folks that, I should say that passes hit a number of receivers where Justin Fields was on the money, but just the offensive skill position player just happened to drop the ball and it led to a turnover, whatever. So Justin Fields wasn't really looking great until the last series. Tevin Jenkins left the practice field with the team trainer today, apparently some sort of precaution or minor injury there. But, per Patrick Finley from the Sun-Times, he said, quote, "It's the most intense practice to date." And it's very early on. Justin Fields had to say, quote, "I would say the defense won the day. Got an off day tomorrow. We can come back Friday and get that one." Of course, it's the Family Fest weekend this weekend. Heard a lot about Jaquan Brisker and the rest of that secondary really coming along as far as the defense is concerned. And, as a whole, this is what we expected, where a lot of money was spent in that defense to make it completely different from last year. You look, of course, at Tremaine Edmonds, who's one of the top 5 inside linebackers out there, who had big shoes to fill with Roquan Smith. But then just how well drafted the secondary went with Jaquan Brisker and company around there. So, impressions, Ross, for you after hearing all of this and seeing some highlights. What do you think about this defense and how it's coming along so far?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you spent 2 second-round picks last year on Brisker and Kyler Gordon, and so when you draft secondary guys that high, you anticipate that those guys can be very good football players, if not Pro Bowl caliber players, sooner than later. And I think we really have high hopes for Brisker. Remember, this guy led the team in sacks last year from the safety position. He had a hell of a year tackling the football. He created a couple turnovers, and he's really on a trajectory right now, to me, to be a potential perennial Pro Bowl player. He reminds me a lot coming into the league of a Jamal Adams type, the safety that was drafted from the Jets, who then went over to the Seahawks. Likes to play around the line of scrimmage, but also can be a ball hawk if you need it. And so you see him out there making plays. You see the social media was, the clip that he had where he just basically took the football away from a wide receiver. And, you start to see like this guy could really be a bona fide star going forward. And then Kyler Gordon, who's really embraced 2 things, which is number 1, being called Spider-Man, which is awesome. And he's embraced that nickname. And then number 2, most importantly for the Bears, he's really embraced being a nickel corner. And I think in this league where you see, predominantly a lot of the best receivers in the league line up in the slot, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, the list goes on and on. You need a premier corner in the nickel position who's going to be able to put his nose in there and make a tackle, make a play on the football, and also, come off the edge and stop running backs at the line of scrimmage. And that's what Kyler Gordon is doing so far in training camp, right? Even these first couple of days with pads on. So it makes you feel good if you are the Bears and as a Bears fan to see these guys balling out, especially because, we heard it all last year. Bears potentially should have drafted George Pickens, wide receiver that is now on the Pittsburgh Steelers. We all saw the clip that went out yesterday, I believe it was, where he basically mossed, rookie Joey Porter Jr. and took the football away from him, and then he dropped the football in his lap, and all of a sudden, Twitter exploded. It's like, oh my God, the Bears should have drafted him, and then that's why they had to go out there and trade for Chase Claypool, and then eventually go out there and get DJ Moore, and so that's all water in the bridge at this point, right? Pickens is on the Steelers. We have Gordon, we have Brisker, and those guys are going to be hopefully in that secondary for the next 8+ years. And so we really need them to be stars. We can't go backwards at this point. So it's good to see them ball out early on. Let's hopefully they continue on that trajectory and stay healthy. And you know what? From a defense versus offense standpoint in training camp, I'm glad the defense got one today, because I think we have been hearing a lot about the offense, throughout the early parts of camp so far. Once the pads go on, things start getting different. And I'm glad the defense got one today. Listen, those guys get paychecks on that side of the football. Those guys bust their ass inside of the football. They know everybody wants to talk about Justin Fields and DJ Moore and how DJ Moore is smoking everybody on routes in training camp. they get tired of hearing about that. These guys are very prideful football players. So I'm glad the defense went out there today and kicked their ass. And let's see how the offense responds. And that's how you collectively build a better football team of 53 players.
Certainly different than the last couple of years where the defense has just been abysmal. And obviously we haven't played any real football yet with the Chicago Bears, and as far as that's concerned. But it was like Justin Fields said, right, that the offense, he urged the offense to match the defense's intensity. Losing Tevin Jenkins for some reps is going to hurt too. And it's, again, he was talking about his impressions with that defense after practice too. And Tremaine Edmonds is just one of you can't understate it enough how he will be a big part of the success or the lack thereof of a defense if he's not playing well up to his potential. But he's a tone setter, right? And Tremaine Edmonds, just Justin Fields talking about his athleticism where, on one play in particular, that should have been an easy completion. He just closes the gap. He's great in coverage. He's great at stopping the run. So that helps out guys like, Kyler Gordon, who we were talking about, whose nickname is now Spider-Man with that sick celebration. I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. But you're also seeing that first real look at the D line and the offensive line. And now the offensive line, again, without Nate Davis, you're seeing, there's no guarantee that all 5 starting offensive linemen, there's very little guarantee that the offensive linemen are going to stick together as one unit, right? We see this countlessly throughout the years with a Bears depth chart in particular. So seeing Nate Davis and having to, rotate Lucas Patrick back in or Ja'Tyre Carter, whoever, was stepping back in, and maybe Larry Borum might have to get some big reps as we see the second string and how that looks. And then the defensive line, I think it was nice to hear that, Zach Pickens has a good first step and Gervon Dexter, that these guys are hopefully going to be good rotational defensive line players, because we know that this is going to be a completely different look for the most part in the defensive line in the trenches, and the offense. It's the best gauge to see what kind of success they'll have. So yeah, I don't know if you had any impressions on either side of the line there, Ross.
Yeah, we'll start with the offensive line first. I'm not worried about Tevin Jenkins. It didn't sound too serious, but he does have a history of injuries, and it does look like overall Matt Eberflus and his team are taking a more methodical approach during this training camp, right? They don't want to push these guys too much. They want to get them out there. They want to get the pads on. They want them to hit. But he saw how many injuries were racked up last year, and he's kind of easing these guys along a little bit, especially when it comes to various soft tissue injuries and stuff like that. It's the first couple of days of camp. These guys are big boys, especially in the trenches. 275 plus pounds. This is the first time hitting that they've been hitting for a while. You're going to get guys banged up and nicked up, right? Your body has to get used to hitting again. So, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're still, a month away from Green Bay. We need to kind of ease these guys in a little bit. And so if Tevin Jenkins needs to take the rest of practice off, something like that, in order for him to get ready for close to, to play a couple snaps in preseason game, to play a couple snaps, a couple games after that, and then be ready for week 1, that's okay. I am a little bit concerned about Nate Davis, though, because Nate Davis really hasn't been out there, not even just out on the practice field. And so that is a little bit more concerning to me. This is also the same Nate Davis who really was not out there for OTAs, right? He decided to not show up and kind of train on his own a little bit. And so you just wonder, where he's at health-wise, what kind of shape did he show up in, and things of that nature. There were some rumors coming out of Tennessee that him and Mike Vrabel, Mike Vrabel wasn't a huge fan of his, and so this is a big free agent signing for the Bears, because he really does help to solidify that offensive line. They need him out there. They need him healthy, right? Because then all of a sudden you have to start putting, like you said, Lucas Patrick out there, who should be your backup center / swing guard, or Ja'Tyre Carter, right? And then all of a sudden you have to start thinking about Alex Leatherwood, and how does he look at guard. You really can't afford to lose Jenkins and Nate Davis, at the same time. I think Jenkins will be okay. A little concerned about Nate Davis. I'll still give it a couple weeks, but we really need him out there healthy and practicing. You need these 5 guys cohesive. On the defensive side, it sounds like by all measures, Dexter's been balling, right? They've been playing him at that 3 technique a little bit. Pickens has been balling as well. DeMarcus Walker, who's also a guy that came from Tennessee, has sounds like he's brought an edge to his defense, which I think was really missing last year. Even when Roquan Smith was out there, they just didn't have that nastiness. And then you're like Justin Fields said today, Tremaine Edmonds is going to make everybody better on both sides of football because he is that dominant of a linebacker. He's just that special.
Yeah, no question. Mac and Reed's live 6 o'clock Central Time every Wednesday. You can post your Bears questions in the chat if you're watching live along YouTube, or feel free to reach out to us on the Twitter at the Real Evan Mac and at Ross Reed. With Chase Claypool, I mentioned him briefly and how he was a full participant. Like, we know what we're getting from hopefully a healthy Darnell Mooney. We know what we're getting from DJ Moore and what a great pickup he's going to be. Hopefully Justin Fields' new best friend here, and it can match up with the chemistry that we see throughout the division itself, right? With Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, or you look at Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like it's and Jordan Love and Christian Watson. I feel like we're hearing a lot out of camp, which we'll get to in a bit, about Jordan Love and how he's looking so far. But with the whole receiving core, I think a lot really, is hinging on Chase Claypool's production, I think, for this offense. And he's pretty young, and there's been questions since last year where it was a transitional year where he got picked up a little after midway through the season, and the jury is still out. You're not exactly confident that he's even going to be the top 2 guy at this point. We know that we saw a lot of upside in Pittsburgh with not great quarterback play around him. You figure, of course, a lot of the Bears' offense success, rides on Justin Fields' progression in this year. But what's your confidence level or any thoughts with Chase Claypool and how he's fitting into the offense so far, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about it last week, and he said the same thing. This is the biggest year of his career right now, because he's now going into a contract season. He knows that the Bears went out there and they drafted they traded for DJ Moore. He's going to be their number 1. He's under a contract for a while. He's under a nice contract for a while, but the Bears could rip up that contract in a year or two and give him brand new paper as a reward, and it'll be well deserved. Then you have Darnell Mooney out there. He's a fan favorite. He's a team favorite. He's been on the Bears for a while. He also needs new money. Chase Claypool is not a dumb guy. He probably knows that the Bears are probably going to pick between Claypool or Mooney as to who to pay in the offseason, and Darnell Mooney already has the inside track. And so now all of a sudden, Chase Claypool could be potentially looking at his 3rd team in just a few years, right? He's not even 25 years old yet. And then you start looking at the numbers for Chase Claypool. Listen, it was really good 2020 and 2021, right? He had 62 receptions as a rookie. In 2020, he had 9 touchdowns that year and just bursted on the scene as a 2nd-round pick. And then in 2021, a little bit of a dip, right? He had 59 receptions, but only 2 touchdowns. And then you go to last year, his 3rd year, and then really started to dip again, right? Last year, 46 receptions total with the Steelers and the Bears, right? 32 with the Steelers, only 14 with the Bears, only 1 touchdown last year. He played in 11 total games. And so now the spotlight is really on him. I think this is bullshit, by the way, but it's coming off the heels of all the Paris stuff and the outfit, and people don't think that he takes this seriously and things of that nature. I think that side of things is dumb. But that is the narrative right now that he has to face and defend, especially in a city like Chicago, which is notoriously very blue collar. The wide receivers that we have grown to beloved are guys like Tom Waddle and things like that, who go over the middle and get smashed and wear Cole shirts and stuff like that, right? We're not used to this Chase Claypool. With all that said, I think he's going to have a hell of a year, because he is in a very good spot for himself. He kind of goes back to what he had at the beginning of his career in Pittsburgh, where he's not the first option. He's really not even the second option. But if he can slide under the radar and be that 3rd option and just kind of be the joker around the field, he can line up inside, he can line up outside, he can line up for that short, quick, little out route or the little slant pass over the middle of the field, or he can still blow the top off the defense. But if everybody's paying attention to DJ Moore and a little bit to Darnell Mooney, and oh, by the way, there's that tight end that the Bears just signed last week for a lot of money, we got to pay attention to him. That opens up a lot of things for Chase Claypool. I think he does have a big year this year, and it's going to force the Bears to make a very interesting decision at the end of this year. Do you pay him? Do you pay Mooney? Do you pay both? Do you pay neither? But those are good problems to have for Ryan Poles if he finishes this year and he has to decide, how much money he wants to allocate to two very good wide receivers while having another one on the contract.
I'm pretty conflicted when it comes to Chase Claypool because I see last year, and I know it's a complete turnaround. You're in a different team. You're with a new quarterback. You were maybe building a little bit of chemistry with your previous team's quarterback, but to come in and put up 14 catches for 140 yards in 7 games is pretty awful for a guy where your expectations are huge for a big bodied guy like that. And for what we saw in Pittsburgh, the production that he had, multiple touchdown games, 1,000-yard seasons, all that. And his ability, it just felt like he was really underselling it. If you were to tell me he'd go over that line from last year, I would absolutely put your mortgage on that. But, there was a good article just talking about how Chase Claypool has high expectations for himself, and his work ethic was called into question, like Ross mentioned, but he said, quote, "It's the biggest year of my life. I understand that. If anybody thinks my work ethic isn't matching that, they're deeply mistaken it." And you gotta back that shit up now, man. Absolutely. And you got to set that tone. It starts in training camp right now. It's a long way until game 1 against the Packers. And hopefully we see that work ethic and him being a leader among the receiving core there, because you have a really good on paper trio there. If Chase Claypool plays up to his potential, we saw the flashes of Darnell Mooney when he is healthy from last year, and DJ Moore just slides in the prime of his career, frankly. So that leads us back to, of course, Justin Fields and how I'd also like to get to, I don't know what this Bruce Ali is saying in between the comments, but he also said, "How's Cody Whitehair looking?" And I did say I did see a bunch of commentary along in terms of the depth, as you talked about, Ross, you're concerned about Nate Davis. If Cody Whitehair is hurt, they're pretty fucked on offensive line. It's just with a capital F, it would not look good. Cody Whitehair is that guy who just obviously sets that tone. He's one of the lone anchors, veterans on that offensive line who has been a starter every season. So it's super important. And he approaches this camp like he always does. He's a grinder and he leads by example, I think.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I don't think the Bears they've got very little margin for error on that offensive line because they're thin there. They've got 5 guys trying to all kind of gel together. You've got a rookie as your starting right tackle. You got a second-year guy as your starting left tackle, and then in the middle, Cody Whitehair has been up there in age, right? He's had a bunch of injuries in his career. He's going back to center for the first time in a couple of years. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But then the 2 guys opposite him, Tevin Jenkins hasn't stayed healthy in his early career, and then you've got another veteran in Nate Davis. So, and then the depth behind them, it stinks. It's really bad. So, for the sake of the Bears, most importantly for the sake of Justin Fields, you help that offensive line, stays healthy. Going back to Chase Claypool, to me, the bar for him is really set at 650 receiving yards and anywhere between, 4 to 5 touchdowns this year. And, if he can go over that, that's not a lot, but coming off of what he did last year, I think that's a pretty fair bar to set at. I think that would be a successful year for him. I don't think the Bears re-sign him at that kind of at those kind of numbers, but I think he can go out there and get himself a decent contract somewhere else. I think obviously DJ Moore is going to get his over 1,000 yards this year and probably 10 touchdowns. I think Darnell Mooney can be in the area of about 800 yards receiving and probably about 5 touchdowns in that ballpark. But Claypool is going to be competing with Cole Kmet and Robert Tonyan because tight ends are going to be used a lot. I think they're going to use a lot more in the screen game with Khalil Herbert and Rashawn Johnson. I think you're going to see a lot more jet sweeps and things of that nature with your Velus Joneses. Tyler Scott has been, in the picture in training camp, the rookie, right? He's been getting a lot of touches early on, and we have heard, a lot about his speed. And so where does Chase Claypool figure in and touches and all this stuff? He's got the talent. He's got the ability. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay focused. And when he gets those opportunities, he's got to be able to capitalize on them.
And again, circling back to Justin Fields, it wouldn't be a show without us talking about him at length. And I saw that, one of the trending topics is that Justin Fields is a heavy MVP favorite in terms of betting, at least, with folks putting a lot of bets on him,
Mhm.
more than Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert combined, allegedly through point bet.
Mhm.
And then that also just, I mean, that's one thing, and by all means, go for it. But I would say too that expectations are kind of all over the place. And of course, Stephen A. Smith is a hot take guy who's saying he has low expectations for Justin Fields. And Mike Greenberg says he is going to have an MVP quality season. And it's just so early to tell that, right? Where we are seeing, especially after a practice like this, where it's typical of Justin Fields to kind of downplay it, but also say, hey, we gotta feed off that energy that defense has, and they're challenging us to be better. That's great for the competition. And for a guy in really the early onset of his career, still with a heavy learning curve, it's going to pay dividends to play against Tremaine Edmonds and to play against a revamped defense every week when you go, especially in training camp right now, just starting out and learning the intricacies of your formations and what to look forward to, or how to best combat that defense that is put out across the field from him. It's going to do well. So I mean, I think we're both of the mindset that this every year is going to be a little better in terms of Justin Fields, but in terms of camp today, he said all the right things, right?
He said the right things. He's doing the right things. He looks great physically. When I see the betting stuff and I see people freaking out about that, I as somebody who dabbles myself in betting, I think people really don't know that there's a betting world and then there's like a real life world. And
Yeah.
the betting world, they're constantly looking for the value, right? So you look at Justin Fields, he's plus 2,000 right now in MVP. People are looking at the value, right? And they're looking at kind of the current landscape right now. So let's kind of break it down a little bit, right? Here's a quarterback. He's in the NFC. He is plus 2,000. Last year, he set records as the best rushing quarterback virtually of all time. And then you look at what he has to deal with in terms of the NFC, right? So if you look at who's left, Tom Brady's gone. Aaron Rodgers is gone. Matthew Stafford cannot really stay healthy this year, and the Rams look like they're going to have an abysmal season. So who is he competing against in the NFC to be even the top 3 quarterback in the conference? He's competing with Jalen Hurts, who was in this exact same conversation that Fields was in last year, I feel like. He's also competing against a guy like Dak Prescott. And then who else? Are you throwing Derek Carr in the mix, right? Who might lose Alvin Kamara? We heard today that the league is likely going to suspend him for a few games because of that incident that he had in Las Vegas. The NFC is in a very down spot right now for quarterbacks. That allows a guy like Justin Fields to be able to vault up and be able to potentially put himself in the MVP race if he just has an average passing season. I got this tweet today from Aaron Schatz, who's the creator of DVOA, who's those are advanced analytics that people use, Football Outsiders. He's the founder of that. He's what a lot of people use in the betting community when they look to make their bets. And he put, and I quote, Justin Fields is the most bet player to win MVP is fascinating. Let's say Fields, such as a good runner to win MVP, as all he has to do is to be an average quarterback, a 0 pass DVOA. There is one QB since 1981 who was as bad as Fields for 2 years and then above average. There was one. That guy was Jeff George. Basically, what Aaron is saying is if Fields maintains his consistency as a runner and then just elevates himself to an average passer, which he can now with better weapons around him, he is 100% in that MVP conversation, 100%. And you look at the value, this all goes back full circle, plus 2,000 is worth you putting $20 down there versus a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who we know Patrick Mahomes is good. We know he's the greatest quarterback in the league, but because of that, the value is very minimal there. And that's why Fields is the number one betting option right now for MVP, is because his value is so high and the potential is there.
Can't forget you'll be plugging your betting show in no time too, Ross.
We will be playing. We'll be back pretty soon on Second City Gridiron. Join us on 10 a.m. Central Time, Sunday mornings. We're going to give you guys all our favorite prop bets for the day, and as well as our favorite over-unders and things of that nature. I'm excited. Last year, we won a good deal amount of money. We were partnered with PicksWise. We're going to be coming back this year. We're going to win even more money this year. Help pay for some tuitions out there that you guys have to go through.
What's the matter, friend? Don't want to be rich? Yeah, so I'll be tuning in. I need all the help I can get. As far as putting a pin on Justin Fields, and for my takes here, is that he was talking about playing against the improved defense and praised Allen Williams. That quote, they're doing a way better job this year hiding their coverage. They've done a really good job of that. I really think that's the biggest thing. Showing man tells and playing zone, stuff like that. They're doing a good job of switching it up and really scheming to our offense. That's why I think our offense is getting great work doing that. Allen and the defense have definitely taken it up a step. I'm not going to do anything but make our offense better and challenge our offense. End quote. He's taking it all in stride, and you hit it on the head as far as his progression and his success. Certainly hinges on him improving as a passer first and foremost. We know he can, improvise on plays and scramble when he needs to. That's all he did last season, and they were the best rushing team in the league as a result of it. And he was a highlight reel as a result of it. But we know he's got that rocket arm, and he can be accurate when he wants to. He can throw a deep ball when he wants to. We certainly want to see that. We will see it in the weeks to come against, the Bears defense, and then we'll see. It'll be preseason before you know it. Any closing Bears thoughts, Ross?
No, not at all. Just listen. I think people need to. It's the time of year where we're excited about football, but we still have a little bit to go. So people need to temper everything right now. Kind of take some things they see with a grain of salt, and the same thing for the players. It's 85 degrees outside. They are millionaires living in some crappy dorm room or wherever they're at, right? It's hot. It's sticky. They keep seeing the same players every day and the same teammates, and those guys are running the same plays and this and that. It gets methodical. You start seeing tempers start to flare and emotions start to get a little high. I know people kind of blew out of proportion some Darnell Mooney comments today about Justin Fields, things like that. Everybody has to take a deep breath, right? It'll be over in a couple weeks. We already get a Hall of Fame game tomorrow, right? So we're starting to get some preseason action. I think once training camp hits and we get a little bit towards like mid to late August, hopefully, fingers crossed, this team is still healthy. Then we'll get a good idea of kind of where they're at heading into week one. We still need an edge rusher on this football team, and I still think it's coming. I think that Ryan Poles right now, who people forget, the Bears throughout the whole entire preseason hold the number one pick on the waiver wire. Throughout, no matter who they claim, they still hold it throughout the entire preseason. So I do think he's kind of waiting to see who might get cut, any kind of good veterans out there on the edge where he can just claim them off of waivers before he maybe calls the Yannick Ngakwe's or Jadeveon Clowney's or Justin Houston's of the world. Those guys will always be there.
Edge Rusher Watch 2023. We will see as the weeks go on here. On to the rest of the NFL and keeping it in the division. As I alluded to, we hear that I hear different things. And the headlines I want to hear from The Athletic, for example, where it talked about Jordan Love and this offense continues to struggle. They had a lackluster practice yesterday, and then I guess he's throwing bombs one day and then lackluster the next. That it does, talking about success of the Bears as a whole certainly hinges on Justin Fields developing as a passer. The Packers are really screwed if Jordan Love is not the guy they signed up to have, who was waiting in the weeds with Aaron Rodgers and learning under his wing for so long now. Because we know what Detroit, they went on a run last year with Dan Campbell's coaching and the way that Jared Goff has been able to lead that offense. They had a really good offense around him. And Kirk Cousins, it's like we talked about. I don't know where it went wrong for them, but they were beating some really good teams and playing some great football on both sides of the football last year. In the division, it's early on in training camp. I guess we'll pick up where I left off with Jordan Love and the Packers impressions thus far. And then if you want to give the rest of the division, have at it, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we as Bears fans, we definitely want to root against Green Bay and we want to see them fail and stuff like
And
that.
Detroit, welcome Don
And
Burr.
Detroit, yep, and Detroit as well. Jared Goff has been in this league for a long time. I'm not worried about Jared Goff. He is who he is at this point. He is a very pedestrian, average quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see what the Lions have this year. They're struggling with some injuries right now. They're struggling with some guys who can't stay off of FanDuel right now. Their fucking coach wants an actual lion on the sidelines, and it's it's going to be
at all.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with a little bit of a target on their back this year. But for me, with Jordan Love, listen, let's put everything into a realistic perspective. He's a back end first round pick, and I think a lot of people thought that he was too high where he was drafted at. This is his first time that he's going through an NFL training camp as a starter. This is his first time that he'll be a starting quarterback week one. He's going to struggle. Like every young quarterback does for the most part, unless you're just all world Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, right? Like he is going to struggle. And so I think that everybody up in Green Bay and around the league should temper their expectations. I also will say that for as much as we hate the Packers and stuff like that, I can't bring myself to just shitting on these young kids who are just trying to like figure things out and they've got so much coming at them all at once. As much as I want the Packers to fail, I can't be out there saying Jordan Love stinks every minute or I want him to suck or anything like that. The same way I couldn't do that with Trey Lance last year and how people are doing that with Trey Lance right now too, right? And to be honest with you, if Jordan Love stinks that much and the Packers are that bad, guess what? They're in the running for Caleb Williams, who might be the next best generational quarterback prospect to come out of college football. So you kind of hope he doesn't suck that bad, because you really don't want Green Bay to get Caleb Williams, because then we might be in real trouble. So, for week one, I want him to throw like four interceptions and the Bears to kick the crap out of them and stuff like that. But I don't want him to be. I'm not rooting for the kid to be terrible. I just can never bring myself to that point. If the Bears want to be good, if the Bears want to win the division, go to the playoffs, be Super Bowl contenders, Justin Fields to be a MVP contender, they got to do it. They got to go out there and go take it, right? I don't need Green Bay to fall back to earth. It's time for the Bears to go take a division for a change. So, those are my thoughts on that. The same thing with the Lions, right? I think the Lions right now, everybody just is assuming that they're going to run away with the division. I don't think so. They got some issues right now on both sides of football, some injuries. Jameson Williams, who's already suspended for 6 games this year, he's struggling right now, big time in camp. That was their first round pick from last year. This NFC North is going to be very, very interesting and pretty wide open.
Yeah, the Bears may have had the worst record in the league last year, but they probably had one of the closest margins of defeat throughout the season, between and a tougher schedule too when they're playing the likes of the Eagles and playing Minnesota twice and Detroit twice. Very close games. Those divisional games were really entertaining, I feel like. And they're going to pick up right where they left off and learn from their mistakes. And especially with the revamped defense, they're going to feast on a guy like Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff and a younger quarterback like Jordan Love making his first starts in week one. I know a lot of these guys are licking their chops. If they can put together some semblance of a pass rush, then it's going to really pave the way for Tremaine Edmonds and that secondary to wreak havoc and make it a really long day for Love there. You touched on the Lion mascot for, Dan Campbell and company, and having that out on the sidelines is mad distracting. But we see through college sports, especially, this is just a completely different subject than the NFC North, but of the mascots out there, Ross, especially in the NFL, is there one that you would want to see? I mean, of course, like a Bengal tiger is cool and a lion is cool, but they have an actual raven's kind of harmless. What would you like to see throughout the NFL here?
Yeah, I mean, I would for the sake, I am pro animals and
Ace Ventura have a dolphin.
I was gonna say Pete don't drop in my mentions, so no dolphins on the sidelines, right? We don't want that. Can we get like an actual Titan on the sideline? That would be pretty cool.
Titan would be cool.
A Titan,
Someone
right?
said like an actual giant,
An actual giant.
Giant was still around.
And actually, like Andre the Giant, right? Like, let's say if we can bring back Andre the Giant. What's a brown? Like, what the hell is that, right? How would you
Oh,
bring
they
back
have
a
like
Brown?
it's a bulldog from everything I've seen with their new revamped mascots, and every time we talk about the mascot,
That's right. That's right.
a Packer is by far the lamest one. Like, what are
Yes.
we gonna trot out there?
Yeah, exactly. Just somebody who packs cheese all day.
Big ass Viking,
A big ass Viking would be cool. It leads me to, have you seen the story going around about how they have this zoo in China and everybody thinks that the bear in China is just a person in a bear costume?
Yeah.
So, but it's actual real bear. They're like called sun bears and they're just like tall, skinny bears. And so
Yeah.
maybe we can get a sun bear to show up on Soldier Field and everybody thinks he's an actual person.
Someone said that bear looked like he's a bear, people, but he just has a body like Hank Hill. I was like, well, that's very accurate. Just no ass like Hank Hill, standing like buy propane and propane accessories for me.
That's awesome.
It was very interesting. I mean, I'm all for I as far as Dan Campbell advocating for the lion, I would want to see it, but just the animal in captivity thing is so tough too. You see like Georgia, like in college sports, and how that bulldog just looks sad as shit every time they cut to him, or any other animal. Like they have the buffalo in Colorado. Like that buffalo does not want to be in a stadium with 70,000 people.
Well, also, like, how did you not remember what happened with Siegfried and Roy? You don't want to go full Siegfried and get your throat ripped out while you're like in the middle of the fourth quarter because you have a fucking lion on the sidelines. So don't do that. Lions deserve to be out in the wild, or if they are in some sort of captivity, like they are at zoos and stuff like that, at least they have professionals around them who love these lions and take care of them and feed them the proper things, and not, you don't want your lions to be walking around all of a sudden he's chomping on David Montgomery's leg. That wouldn't be good for him.
Absolutely. Well, circling back to the NFL, it's early on in training camp. We talked about in the division. We both play fantasy football for sure. We're in a league of our own. I'm in another money league and certainly play the daily fantasy lineups sort of game. But early on like this, you're preparing your big draft board. I don't know what impressions you have for just overall, best value. If you have the number one pick tomorrow, if you're going running back or wide receiver, what's usually your philosophy when, we roll around this time? And if you have top guys and you want to clue us in, then by all means, Ross.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the past, I think always the model was whether you were in a PPR or a standing league, you would take the running back and you'd go running back. A lot of times, we see them go 1 through 7, but I think the tide has changed tremendously on that. Number one, these running backs really can't stay healthy anymore. Number two, these wide receivers, their projection has just skyrocketed so much. You have to start taking these guys. I think picks 1 through 3. If I have the first pick, whether it's a standard league or a PPR, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. He's just the best offensive player in football right now. You'd be crazy not to take him. And then if you were looking at number 2 overall, you have to start thinking about Jamar Chase, who's another guy who's just right behind him. He's going to have a huge year production-wise. Number 3 is where things start to get interesting, right? You could, theoretically take Cooper Kupp, but he's battling an injury right now that we saw. We don't know what the Lions are going to do this year. He's also coming off an injury last year that also then opens the door for guys like Christian McCaffrey, who's going to get a lot of touches with the 49ers. I'm sure Saquon Barkley is going to get ran into the ground this year because the Giants are going to want to use up as much of him as possible. And so that's where your running backs come into play. And, where do you draft a guy like Bijan Robinson, who is a top 10 overall pick running back, and Atlanta is going to want to use him early and often, especially because Spencer Ritter, the quarterback, is not very good. So I think this year the tide has turned a little bit where wide receivers should go at least 1 and 2, maybe 1, 2, 3. And then you start looking at your running backs who do both in the run and passing game. And then, your quarterbacks on the back end, right? Like, a guy like Pat Mahomes, he's going to get drafted early because he is super consistent. He stays pretty durable. He puts up monster numbers. And Travis Kelce is basically a wide receiver in a tight end position. And there's Travis Kelce here, and then it drops big time until you get to the next tight end, your Goddards of the world and Mark Andrews and so on and so forth, Kyle Pitts and those guys. So, wide receiver early, middle of the road, first round, running backs, and then you're looking at like your quarterback or Travis Kelce in there. And I like I usually what I say my rule is I genuinely like, especially in those middle rounds, getting football players who are on good teams, because you know they're going to still be playing hard and
Absolutely.
still be playing meaningful football when you need them the most in the playoffs later in the season.
Yeah, being on a good offense just will work out best for you. Is speaking of Jamar Chase, just look at the other guys on his roster, right? And whoever else Joe Burrow is throwing to has multiple targets. And, with the Chiefs, we know that Travis Kelce is going to be that number one option for Pat Mahomes, but who else is going to benefit from playing with him? And I'm with you. It just gets so dicey with running back, especially a year where the top five was all over the place. Josh Jacobs was like the best rusher in the league by numbers. And Miles Sanders rounding out the top five. Nick Chubb is perennially good, but every year these guys are in the conversation, but every year they get closer to a complete drop off. And Derrick Henry, is he still, even in that like top 10? You don't know. And you're questioning Derrick Henry, who was absolutely in that top five of running back conversations, but it's all about the, as we've talked about, these running backs not getting paid and undervalued and underappreciated throughout the league. Well, there's a reason for that, because there's younger guys just ready for you. And you talked about Bijan Robinson, who could be a steal or he could blow up in this first year. It might not be as impactful as you'd think. And Travis Etienne, go from at the top to down. So you really don't know. You just got to value based on high-powered offenses, right? Look at the Eagles. Look like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. It's going to really work out well for you. Look at the Bengals. Look at the Chiefs. And even like the Vikings, Kirk Cousins in the top five passing again. Obviously, Justin Jefferson could go number one overall, but there's going to be a couple guys like Hawkinson. Just his value certainly goes up when Kirk Cousins is thrown to him as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be here before you know it, our drafts.
It will. And it always, as always, every year, who's going to stay healthy in these next 2 to 3 weeks, right? When you start, a big thing is you definitely don't want to be in a league that drafts too early, because if you have a draft in a week or so and a guy gets hurt, you're really in a tough spot.
Got to handcuff your running backs to that end,
Yep.
Got to be ready.
Yep.
On to your White Sox, Ross, as we're in the final 15 minutes of our show here. Fire sale for the Sox. I just passively have been enjoying Chicago baseball because neither team is particularly good, but there'll be certain games where they show some potential. But now Jake Berger, who was a favorite of the team, traded, and he was very emotional about it. Lance Lynn gone, Lucas Giolito, among others. Again, basically, like I said at the beginning of the show, and as the front office has made it clear, anyone not named Lewis Robert can go. He's tradable. And Ryan McGuffey said from NBC Sports Chicago, quote, "It's not fair to the people who cover the team, and it's not fair to the fans." I think he hit it on the head for a lot of Sox fans out there. It's another disappointing season for them. I don't know. Where do you go from here? Is it just like a change of ownership for you, Ross? Is it managerial? What do you do with the farm system? Everything is just kind of such a fall from when you were pretty high on this team a year or two ago, or these past years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're like on our third rebuild now in like the last 5 to 6 years, right? And so, I think it's very simple. I think that the White Sox, who also share owners with the Bulls, have some of the worst ownership in sports. I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf cares too much about his teams anymore. He's not willing to spend any money. He didn't want to cough up the money to bring in guys like Bryce Harper or Manny Machado, even though those guys go to smaller markets. And so that's a problem, because you had the talent a couple of years ago. You could have, you went to the playoffs a couple times. You need to impact bats. You need to spend some money and trust that your fans were going to support you and show up to the ballpark. And guess what? They would have. I promise you they would have. I'm a huge White Sox fan. I've been since my childhood. I've seen that ballpark packed plenty of times, especially when that baseball team is very, very good. And so he chooses to be very frugal. And I think the White Sox are in this position in large part because of him. But Rick Hahn's made a lot of mistakes too. And I think where Rick Hahn has made mistakes at is he has spent money in the wrong area. So the few times that Jerry Reinsdorf will allow him to spend money, what he's done is he's spent money on like bullpen arms and stuff like that. You should never pay big money for bullpen guys. Those guys they're like running backs. They grow on trees at this point. You can just find them anywhere. Now you see he's traded half his bullpen. Unfortunately, Liam Hendricks, had to battle cancer early in the year, and he came back, and that was just announced as we went on the air today that he's having Tommy John surgery. He's out for the next 10 to 12 out for the next 12 to 14 months. Stop paying for bullpen arms. That is the biggest waste of money that you can ever do. Take that money and use it towards an impact second baseman or a corner outfielder or something like that. Those are my big things. So, otherwise, it's going to be interesting to see where this whole thing goes. This is now their third or fourth rebuild. The funny thing is, I actually like the talent that they got back, in these trades. And so this has this whole cyclical cycle because Rick Hahn, this is how he gets a longer leash throughout all this process, is he acquires talent. We get excited about the talent. Talent comes up. They show flashes. We get excited because we think this is going to be a playoff / World Series team. And then it falters and he trades it away for new talent. And we're like, okay, now we get excited again. And so this has just been a whole bad, cycle that we've been on the last couple of years. And if it was up to me, I think that Rick Hahn should not be allowed to see this process through after the season. I think the White Sox should clean house. But on the flip side, I don't trust Jerry Reinsdorf to bring in anybody competent to get this back on track. So it's tough. I unfortunately don't think this is going to change much until, I don't want to be morbid, but until the team does change ownership, at some point.
I think there's a ton of White Sox fans that would agree with you, and you look at the Bulls' struggles to an extent too. It's again kind of evident of Jerry Reinsdorf's philosophy and his ownership philosophy overall. So it's tough. It's a combination of so many factors, but yeah, you hit it on the head with the surplus of just spending on the bullpen, and then just Tim Anderson and other guys just missing significant time or having slumps. So your offense has struggled. The pitching rotation is just not what you thought. And on the north side, it's not much better, right? You saw a 7 home run game from the Cubs, and they're at least more invested in this core, and they, have a decent farm system in place and seem to have some offensive pieces going forward to build on. But neither team in the Chicago baseball scene is making noise right now. It's really just fast forward to next summer. But you can get good cheap tickets right now and go enjoy August baseball, man. It's beautiful, whether you're at the G Spot or Wrigley Field.
Absolutely. Yeah, at least the Cubs, they kind of bought a little bit. They added some guys. They didn't trade Cody Bellinger. They're still in the mix, right? And so they got a big series right now against the Reds. I know they beat the crap out of the Reds yesterday, but they did put Marcus Stroman, who's been struggling on the IR. So I think we all have been longing in Chicago for a while now to just get meaningful baseball back in this city again. So hopefully sooner than later, both sides of town can praise their baseball teams, and we don't have to worry about getting excited about training camp in July because we're too busy worried about good baseball.
Agreed there, Ross. We've been waiting for this. Lizzo in hot water with these claims from her backup dancers against her, Lizzo, and her dance captain, Shirlene Quigley, in a lawsuit filed by her ex-dancers. It's pretty wild. Lizzo was accused of overworking the dancers, making the group re-audition in an excruciating 12-hour rehearsal. 12 hours! Those she was dissatisfied with would be fired and sent home, accused of firing a dancer for challenging her claim that the group was drinking before performances, accused of making a thinly veiled comment relating to a dancer's weight gain, and later firing her for recording a meeting while suffering an eye condition. This is bad, man. Accused of coercing a dancer into touching a woman's breast at a strip club despite the dancer opposing. And the list goes on. Accused of trying to convert the dancers to her religion, accused of scolding the dancers for having premarital sex, just like wild things at this point. And they were all, the couple dancers were like talking to TMZ. It's a bad look for Lizzo, who's seen very empowering for these dancers too, for the most part. Now it seems like the veil has gone up and shows she's a shitty person or something. I don't know how it's going to pan out. It's all But yeah.
It's why you never know who these people are, and you got to really just, your celebrities and your entertainers, you got to take them at for what they worth. And I always say you can love and appreciate the art and not really love the artist. And I think that if you do somehow, some way fall in love with the artist, you could potentially be setting yourself up for disappointment down the line, because you don't know these people, and a lot of times these people are not who you think they are, and they eventually will show you that down the line. It's a shame. Prayers to all the people involved. If she did that, I hope that she gets punished for it, and I hope those people get very well compensated for it as well.
It's the opposite of, you see Taylor Swift spending $50 million on her entire crew for this ridiculous tour that she's been doing. It's certainly the summer of these epic fucking tours where these artists are making money hand over fist, with Taylor Swift selling out, Soldier Field everywhere she goes, basically. And then Beyonce, I know you were at that show, and what a spectacle that was. How cool that is.
Yeah.
Very deserving in Soldier Field. And now Drake doing his stadium tour and just collecting the largest bras in America and beyond right now. It's just the Tiggo biddies coming to the Drake shows.
He's got big, broad women. Ed Sheeran set a record last Saturday for
breasted women.
Yep, Ed Sheeran set a record last Saturday at Soldier Field for 73,000 people in that stadium. And so that was a modern record for Soldier Field. And he went to the Wiener Circle and passed out hot dogs, and
he did like that,
and put his middle finger up at everybody. So a man of the people, Ed Sheeran. Shout out to him for that. And now, this weekend we get Lollapalooza coming into town, which I have to pick up my son every day from day camp at Millennium Park, and I go right through the teeth of that. Yep, right through the teeth of that. Yeah.
Damn, yeah. You got it tomorrow, and we're recording on Wednesday, so yeah, you got it Thursday and Friday.
Thursday, Friday, absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Be Bradley's first Lala. Just scalp a ticket. Here, son. Here's how you scalp a ticket.
Absolutely. Speaking of Lala, I know I'm looking at the headliners. I know Billie Eilish. She will be playing tomorrow night. I know her. Mm-hmm. I have no clue who Karol G is.
You know of her from that Corona commercial. I don't know any of her goddamn music though.
Got it. I definitely know who Kendrick Lamar is, of course.
Yes.
I have no clue who 1975 is.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I also don't know who Odessa is. Tomorrow and Together. I of course know who the Red Hot Chili Peppers are, and I definitely know who Lana Del Rey is. And those are just the headliners. You start getting into the rest of the names on here. I know Carly Rae Jepsen and Diplo, but I don't know who Skizzy Margs is, or Sideways, or Suki Waterhouse, or Poolside, or Sarah Kinsley, or Danielle Ponder, or the Sacred Souls. So
it's the Sacred Souls. You would like the Sacred Souls though. They're very good. They're Sacred Souls are, like they basically say there in the title, they're a good soul band. They're from Daptone, I believe, which is one of my favorite record labels. Charles Bradley and Sharon Jones.
Yep.
They're part of that record label. But it's that time of year too where you see on like Jimmy Kimmel or certain radio stations will do it, where you ask people, sideways, like, is this a band at Lollapalooza or is this made up? And you could miss me with a lot of these, but our Skizzy Mars especially, like, no, it's made up. That's not a real band name. Who would have fucking thought that was a great band name? Nobody.
I was gonna say very light on the hip hop this year. I mean, we got Kendrick Lamar, Pusha T will be there Saturday. Lil Yachty will be there. I don't know if he's really even hip hop anymore. He's kind of moved into a funk category.
Yeah, getting Jid was big for them, I think. I think he's certainly, you think about the best young rappers out there right now.
Yeah, Joey Badass will be there. He's a favorite. I do love Joey Badass.
Yeah, he's great. So they have some good quality for the few hip hop performers they have there over like the quantity. I'm sure that, who knows too, with Lollapalooza, we've seen that, Chance the Rapper goes from one of the small side stages to getting big. So I hope there's some local talent. I mean, you can't pay me to go to 4 days of this shit though. It's wild. I mean, the weather looks like it'll turn out, and and it's a better quality lineup, I feel like, than I've seen. And I know we're talking about, we don't know half the artists at this festival, but it seems better than years previous. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's Godspeed to those people. Good luck to them. It's also Venetian night this weekend, so that's going to be a lot of people are going to be on acid this weekend walking around Grant Park between Venetian night and Lollapalooza.
And Ross will just be watching them all, smoking a cigar, enjoying the show.
Right. That's exactly right.
Did you listen to Travis Scott's album on the note of music? He had his Utopia come out.
Yeah, and smoking acid and doing acid, right? That's a very Travis Scott inspired thing to do. Yeah, I did listen to it. I mean, listen, it's a Travis Scott project. You have to fall in love with the production, and you have to fall in love with the features. You're not going to get much of a lyrical breakdown if you're talking about Travis Scott or anything like that, but he puts out good quality music. It's it's funny, he kind of created that Yeezus sound that Kanye took for a while and ran with, and I think that now that Kanye has kind of stepped away, he went back to that sound. There's a track on there that literally sounds like Black Skinhead, and I looked up the production and it was from Daft Punk, and I was like, oh, okay, it literally sounded like that. So I think he kind of was like, I want to bring this sound back. He's going to drop some crazy visuals for it. He tried to do a concert in Egypt and they canceled that. I think he's got one in Pompeii coming soon. So I do like Travis Scott's music. I did enjoy the album. I want to listen to it a couple more times, listen to it twice, but I love the features that he had on there as well. The Beyonce feature is absolutely insane. He had a Drake feature on there, of course. He got 21 Savage features on there, and a whole host of other names. So I did enjoy the project.
I enjoyed it too, and like you said, him being from that good music family, you could hear it in like Circus Maximus, giving you beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy vibes, and then everyone from The Weeknd to Future to West Side Gun. I really enjoyed the quality of these features is just unheard of, right? When this has been a long time coming from Astroworld for him to have this follow-up album. But yeah, you did not skim. You had Dave Chappelle in one of his songs too, just doing spoken word, but pretty good. Kid Cudi, SZA, Future, Hyena, Schizo, and Lost Forever are some of my favorites. Those are all really good. I mean, he's hit it real hard with Hyena to begin, but production, like you said, the features, you get James Blake thrown in there as well. It was heavy, man. Very good.
Yep.
You gonna watch Winning Time?
No.
You completely missed season one. For those folks that don't know, Ross did not like Winning Time. He was not into it.
Not at all. I'm out. I'm out. I'm watching so much other TV right now. Nope. Somebody told me to watch Invincible on Amazon, so I've been watching that. I finished my 2 years too late White Lotus binge, so I'm all caught up on White Lotus. We got one more episode of Hijack left on Apple, so I need to watch that, the Idris Elba show. And then I did start the Steven Soderbergh show on Max right now, Full Circle, which is interesting, very interesting show. So I don't have time for Winning Time. I'm out.
No time for Winning Time for Ross and John C. Reilly and company. I like the guy who plays Larry Bird. I'll be in it for that too. He's great. See you next year, jackass. He's great.
Is it Adrian Brody on the show too?
Adrian Brody is on the show. He plays Pat Riley.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's good casting.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Plays fucking Pat Riley.
Yeah.
He's got range, my friend. And RIP. Speaking of range, RIP to Paul Rubens, of course, of Pee Wee Herman fame, but a great comedy career in Hollywood. I mean, great outpouring of love, and you forget about outside of Pee Wee's Funhouse and all of that fame he had playing that character. He just had a lot of, from Mystery Men to Blow, just a lot of great cameos in films and TV. Just a genuinely funny guy. And from Mark Hamill to Judd Apatow, there was a good outpouring of love for him, so he will be missed for sure.
Absolutely. R.P. Ingalls Cloud as well from Euphoria fame.
Yeah, I didn't watch Euphoria, but that 25, I don't know what the fuck.
That was
there, man.
tough.
Yeah.
It's funny because he always gave me Mac Miller vibes, and so those two kind of
100%. Yeah.
those two unfortunately kind of passed away, very similar. And we'd be remiss to say, get well soon to Aldo, of course,
Aldo,
our leader at the bar
Aldo's
room
leader.
who had surgery today. I heard that he's doing well. He's recovering well, and we hope that we wish him nothing but the best. We hope we can see him back behind the microphone very, very soon. But until then, all of us here at the bar room will hold it down for him as he would want us to.
Precisely. And with that, we are out of show. We are signing off. Thanks to everybody for watching on YouTube here, and follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network for all of our great programming. You can catch the audio only versions on Spotify and iTunes, of course. I'm at 311 Mac on Twitter. Ross is at Ross Reed. Everybody be good to each other out there. Enjoy your weekend. We will be back with more Bears news and fun next week. For now, we say so long, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you.